friends, all our Grey Ghost people. We're back again. You know the drill. It's 5:15 on Saturday night, week and episode number 3. As much fun as we're all having, I'm sure we're all getting a little antsy too to get to see you in person. So let's see here. I'm getting ready to the corner. Up in the lounge, so beautiful. Oh, look at the sun coming in, but missing all our people out here. I wonder, do we have? Well, there they are. No grand entrance tonight, but that doesn't mean we still shouldn't have. Yay! Wait, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. Let's hear it again. I'm seeing everybody. Michelle, there they are. Yay! We're so excited to have you all with us tonight for another edition of Happy Half Hour, starring Al and Cheryl Keller, to our owners and winemakers. Thank you so much for joining us.
Are we on now?
Yes, we're on now. And I see the little clappies too. Excellent, excellent.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us for our 3rd episode of Happy Half Hour at Grey Ghost. We're coming to you live today from GG Studio 1. And this is kind of exciting that we're live on the air. We've eliminated the commercials today, so this is going to be 30 minutes of just us having a good time. We do want to make sure that you stay with us to the end. We've got a very special announcement that we want to add to the show, so we'll get to that in a minute. Hope you all had a wonderful Easter holiday. Sorry we missed you all. It kind of reminds me a little bit of a story that I thought I'd start off with. There was a priest, an elderly gentleman, who was talking about how important it was to his parishioners to give up something for Lent. And they all knew he was an avid golfer. So he decided that he would sacrifice 6 weeks of golf to show how important it was to make a sacrifice. About 3 weeks into Lent, he was traveling down a back road when he came across a little municipal golf course. Knowing he was outside of his parishioners' area, he thought, what the heck? I've got the clubs in the trunk, no one's gonna know. So he pulled them out and decided to play one real quick round of golf. Who happened to be watching but God up in heaven with St. Peter? He teed off on the first hole and hit the ball into the rough. Just about that time, a little squirrel came running out, grabbed the ball, and went dashing across the green. As he went running, a giant hawk came down, swooped up the squirrel, carrying him away, and as he did, the squirrel dropped the ball back onto the green. God then sent a slight earthquake which caused the earth to quiver a little bit, and the ball rolled into the hole, a hole in one. St. Peter looked at God and said, you did that on purpose, didn't you? And with a smile, God said, yes. He said, well, I don't understand. Here he was supposed to be sacrificing for a full 6 weeks, and he gave it up after 3. Why would have you done that? And God looked at St. Peter with a smile and said, who's he gonna tell? Sorry, sometimes we have confusion on the writing. Some people around here don't really know how to spell. Now, what we're going to do is do a quick refresher from last week. As you remember, we're in a crisis situation, and it's very important that we make sure we keep our hands clean and as much as possible away from our faces. So like we taught you last week, we are going to be keeping our hands, both hands, busy by holding 2 glasses of wine. And this way we're assuring ourselves, oh, here comes another glass, of not touching our face. Now, before we talk about the wine we're about to have, what I'd like to do again is have Cheryl kind of give you a feel of about the many exciting things that have happened at Grey Ghost this week. Cheryl, would you like to discuss it?
Yes, Allison, I was chuckling behind the camera.
I could not have said that better. Once again, I think she expresses herself so beautifully. Tonight, Cheryl and I are enjoying a glass of the 2016 Cabernet Sauvignon, which just happens to be a wine that took a gold medal in the California Grand Harvest competition last year. So we're really excited to be able to have it. I thought I'd talk a little bit about the wine so you have some idea of exactly what we're tasting. This Cabernet is 98% Cabernet, 1% each Cabernet Franc and Merlot. The grapes came from the vineyards directly behind the winery, handpicked by our many volunteers who are the best of the best of the best. Once picked, they're destemmed, not crushed, then small lot fermented, and once fermentation is completed, the wine is moved to French oak, barrels ranging from 1 to 3 years old. They stay on oak for 18 months. The wine is then moved from the barrel, top down. This is an unfiltered red. Please note the clarity. Was that stiff enough? And then moved directly into the bottle. It's then bottle aged for a short period of time before it's released in the fall. Cheryl, here's to the 2016 Cabernet.
So while you all are drinking, Chris and Sally Christopher are enjoying a 2011. Virginia Wine Time is enjoying the same vintage you all are. I saw, did Roger Conlon bust open a 2007 Reserve Cab tonight? Melissa Carey did ask if the winemaking that you did on this qualifies it as a reserve.
No, very good question. A reserve actually goes into new French oak and stays on oak for 3 years. Those grapes come off the old vineyards that you drive through when you first come on the property. Although the 2016 was an exceptionally good year, we did make a reserve, and it is available now at the winery, but this is just our regular, what I would call our regular Cabernet.
I think I'm a little jealous of the Prilux who have a Merlot and a Riesling open, a his and hers. Oh, Sherry and Dave have a 2015 Reserve Cab. What they want to know is how does the 2015 Reserve Cabernet compare against the 2016?
The 2015, I personally feel, has a lot more fruit to it, a very fruity styled wine. The 2016 is still very young. A lot of lively tannin in it. The longer this wine ages, the softer it's going to become. Both of them are very comparable. In many of the tests that we did where the 14, 15, and 16 were compared against one another, many people were amazed at how consistent those reserves were. Very good question. Now, we do have a question that came in from last week that we didn't have a chance to respond to. If I got the question right, is opening a bottle of wine a good idea before we drink it? Well, Cheryl and I did a long amount of studying over the week where we would try to drink a bottle of wine that had not been opened. And we found that the bottles that were opened were much easier to consume. So yes, it is a very good idea to open a bottle prior to consuming it. And we didn't take this very lightly. We actually did a series of studies using different varieties of wine to make sure that whatever we were studying came out accurately. Now, along the same line, a little more on the serious side, how long should a wine be open before it's drunk? Now, that's an excellent question, Al. A full-bodied red, like our Reserve Cabernet Sauvignons, we often open about 30 minutes to an hour prior to consuming it. Whites, on the other hand, can be drunk as soon as the bottles are open. A lot of people have asked about decanting wines, especially older reds. Decanting is really designed to separate the wine from sediment, and in the process aerates the wine. A old red is very delicate. It's been in the bottle for a long time. When Cheryl and I are having one, we pour it directly from the bottle very gently, trying not to disturb the sediment, and then we enjoy that wine while it's still relatively young from the bottle. The longer it sits out, the more rapid that wine is going to break down. So you're going to want to, if you do decant it, try to minimize the aeration of it, but it will give you a lot of fruit and a lot of flavor to it. Do I have any questions about that?
Kevin Hagan asked how the 2013 Cabernet is pouring.
That one is sold out. We do have it available from the library. It is pouring very well. It's very soft. It's got a very nice finish to it. Now, just to give you some idea of what has happened here this past week, it's been a very busy week. We bottled the 2019 Saval, turning out to be a fantastic wine. Many of you were questioning whether or not we got any frost or freeze. We did have freeze warnings out here. Fortunately for us, it was a mere frosting. As a result, we did a live walkthrough of the vineyard yesterday, and what we found was less than 1% damage in the Chardonnay, which is more likely to be damaged in frost. Found no damage in any of the other varietals we're growing here on the property. A lot of that slower bud break was the result of the cooler weather we had leading into yesterday, and also the fact that these vines are very mature, very old, and they have a tendency to break bud a lot later than a younger vine would. So we feel very fortunate, very blessed that we dodged the bullet on this latest frost that we had, not last night, but the night before. A little bit of a schedule for next week, just so you have some idea, and we'll talk a little bit about this in episode 4, a week from today. But we are beginning to see bud break, so we're going to be doing bud brushing off the trunks. And again, we're going to try to do a live performance on that, or program on that during the week, so you can actually see what we're doing when we do bud brushing. Also, scheduled next week is going to be the first spray of the season. We're far enough along now that we have to get a spray on to protect the vines from early diseases like phomopsis and some of the diseases that affect the younger vines or the younger shoots. Any questions now?
Yes, I have a number of questions. So, Angie, if you know how to do that, girl, you come on back. Yes, Joe, you can purchase wines from the library. Actually, we have a whole menu book on that. Sherry asked 2 questions. She wants to know, so people use aerators. Do you recommend doing so?
When you pour a glass of wine, you're basically aerating the wine. It accelerates the aeration to the wine, but merely taking your glass and swirling it is equivalent to aerating that wine. So it's not necessary. It's a nice thing to do if you want to aerate it, but it's not something that would be necessarily performing anything more than merely swirling the wine in your glass.
Sherry also asked, how old are your oldest vines?
The oldest vines were planted, well, actually, they date back to '82, and those were the vines that we moved out here from our residence in Dale City. The oldest vines on the property were also planted in '87, and those were the nursery vines that were purchased with the intent of expanding the growth, the winery.
And then Michelle Cross asked, when will the new Saval be available to purchase?
That will probably be later on in either late spring or early summer. Amy will keep you posted both on email, and we'll try to get something out in our newsletters as well.
And Karen said, what grape do you have the most of growing on site?
Actually there's four types of grapes that are growing pretty much equally. On the red side, it's Cabernet Sauvignon. That's our principal red. On the whites, it's the Chardonnay, the Vidal, and I'm very happy to say the Gewürztraminer. We've been planting a little bit more as it's coming down the pike, so we are producing a little bit more each year.
And no worries, Stacy Tiley, the Chardonnay is looking good, so you don't have to worry about that. And you can look at our little video from early on in the week.
Any other questions? Well, we're about ready to start part 2, Al and Cheryl's first date. To bring you up to date, for those of you who are joining us and didn't see last week's episode, it took Al a great deal of guts to be able to call Cheryl and ask for a first date. When he called her, it was asking her to go to the Bob Hope show, only to find out before he asked her that she was not a big Bob Hope fan. Al already had the tickets. He bit the bullet, dialed, asked her, and what did she say?
Why, yes, Al, I'd be happy to go to Bob Hope with you.
Al was stunned. Cheryl immediately went to her roommate and said,
I just accepted a date with Al Kellert.
her roommate was stunned. As you can see, this date was destined for greatness. The date was May 13, 1968. I know you are all shocked that I could recall that particular date. Why did I recall it?
Because Cheryl told him.
Yes, Cheryl told me the date. It's one that she remembers. Finally, after having the nerve to ask her out, we then went to the Bob Hope show. Now, for you young'uns out there, back in the 60s, when you went to a show like this, you dressed up. So Cheryl wore this real sexy black dress with white pinstripes. And if you could remember all of your old movies, the dresses were really nice and short. Beautiful black patent leather shoes, and her famous, although now missing, Mickey Mouse wristwatch. Al donned himself in a sports coat and slacks with wingtips. Notice, no jeans. We then walked to the arena, keeping in mind both of us living on campus, so it was relatively easy to get there. We'd had a rainstorm shortly before that, so as we're walking over to the arena, Al, in his natural gracefulness, managed to push Cheryl into a mud puddle with, of course, her beautiful shoes. She was also very gracious and didn't make any comment, merely smiling, knowing that he had forked out some huge bucks for these tickets. After the show, he took her to dinner. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Al, he's a rather cheap son of a gun, and he didn't have a lot of money. Back then, the Illinois sales tax was 5 cents on the dollar. However, if you spent 10 cents or less, there was no tax. Al had a grand total of 20 cents in his pocket. So when he took her over to the student union, he graciously said, "Cheryl, would you like a cup of coffee or an ice cream cone?" She opted for coffee. He took the cone. He handed her a dime and said, "You buy your coffee and I'll buy the ice cream cone," thus saving a penny. As you can see, this is where his daughter and son learned their financial acumen. During the course of dinner, they commenced to talk, and Al started informing her that he thought they should have a family with enough children to field a baseball team. This was an ominous start for the first date. What we're going to do is stop there and wait until next week when we talk a little more about their dating, what occurred to them as they approached graduation, the Vietnam War, which had a tremendous impact on our life, engagement, Al's first drink at the age of 21 and how significant that was, his first winemaking, and very interestingly, something that only Midwesterners would probably understand, Cheryl's detasseling of corn. Is there any questions about the first date?
Well, because there's a little delay, I'm going to swing back to a few other questions. Gail asks, what do you feel is your best red right now? I would say the one that's open, but...
Well put, Amy. Well, I'm very partial to Cabernets. I'm a carnivore, and I love the reserve Cabernets. To me, that's what I look for in a very full-bodied red. So if I'm leaning toward a red and I've got a lovely steak, I will definitely go with one of the reserve Cabernets.
And then Cindy Larkin asks, what is the best temperature for serving wine?
That's an excellent question and very well misunderstood. When reds are served, you've been told to serve them at room temperature. Room temperature is not the temperature in the room, it's the cellar temperature. So actually in the US, we tend to serve our reds too warm and our white too cold. A red should probably be served between 58 to 62 degrees. It's going to bring out a lot more of the fruit to it and make it a much more enjoyable wine. Whites, on the other hand, have a tendency to be served too cold, especially oaked wines. The colder a white is, if it's coming from an oak barrel, the more astringent it's going to be. So we, Cheryl and I, when we're drinking a reserve Chardonnay or a Seyval, which has been on oak, we normally have it, again, at around cellar temperature, about 56 degrees. If we're drinking a white that's come out of stainless steel, that could come right out of the refrigerator at 45, and it'll be very fruity and very fruit forward.
We have a couple people who just need a refresher on which college you met at in Illinois.
This was the Southern Illinois University Carbondale campus down in Carbondale, Illinois.
And I have to agree with Chris and Sally Christopher, who said, how are we going to get all that information in our next half hour? Oh, Sherry wants to know, oh, Cheryl, I wonder if she's going to have time for this. Question for Cheryl, what has been the biggest challenge you and Al have faced since you opened?
That we personally have faced or dealing with the business?
Ooh, maybe you just pick one of those, because there'll be a delay in her following up. Ooh, the suspense is killing us. Should we say?
Maybe the mountains of paperwork. Our goal was to grow grapes, make wine, sell wine to people, make new friends, and then we get buried with all the red tape, paperwork, taxes and reporting and all that. That's probably been personally my biggest challenge.
And Sherry said if we have to save it for next week. Sherry, maybe we'll get a whole list of things to tell you about next week. How does that sound?
Okay, now what we're going to do, we're going to do a few fun facts about the early days of Grey Ghost. Again, looking back at the history of Grey Ghost, we've often talked about, for many of you who've been on the tour, about the fact that it took us a while to find it. But let me just run it down real quickly. Cheryl and I actually looked over 2 years before we found this property, and we couldn't get any real estate agents to show it to us. It was so run down, they were just embarrassed to take it. So we had a wonderful couple that lived next door to us, both in real estate in Dale City, and Ann Talkington was the young lady who said, I'll take you there. When we saw it, we knew we had a diamond in the rough and immediately put an offer on the property. As a result, we started planting the vineyards in '87. If you can remember, the vines came out before the kids did, and that was very important. We started immediately renovating the stables, which today is the tank room, but believe it or not, that was the original winery. The original painting was all done by Cheryl. All of the brick and block work were done by Al. The crush pad, next time you go out, look at the size of the crush pad. All of the rebarb was hand tied by Amy and Cheryl prior to the concrete being laid. If you look at the size of the pad, please note there's no cracks in the pad. To have a pad that size without any expansion joints gives you some indication of the amount of rebarb that those two young ladies put in. When you look at the vineyard, all of the posts that were put in were dug by Al and Al, the two Als. And all of the planting was done on hands and knees by Cheryl and Amy. It was a massive undertaking. There's over 8,800 vines on the property now, all of which were hand planted. We purchased the property in '86, and if you remember, we didn't open the winery until '94. So that was a 6-year period of time. During that period of time, we invested in the equipment, buying a little bit as we could, piece by piece, over 5 years. We threw everything we had into Grey Ghost, our savings and all, and at one point in time, the joke around here is if the washing machine goes down, Cheryl's going to be down by the creek washing the clothes by hand. And it came pretty close to that. What we're going to do is save the next phase of our Grey Ghost life for the next phase of the program, which will be in episode 4. We got to keep the suspense going, or otherwise we're not going to get you guys to keep showing back up. Are there any questions about the initial startup of the winery?
Not yet, but Carol Slaughter would like to know about the difference between the, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, this just popped in. Susie Lunsford wrote Passbook Savings with Piedmont Federal. Yeah, Susie,
Yeah.
we totally had that going on. That's so funny. So, and thank you, Joe, for your comment about us being inspiration. So Carol Slaughter down in South Carolina asking the difference between the 2010 and the 2011 Cabernet Sauvignon.
That's a great question. If you remember, 2010 was a reserve year, 2011 was not. In 2011, we got a significant amount of rain and made the decision based on the color we were getting out of the cab not to produce a reserve cab. We always start with being optimistic and hoping to produce one. So the 2 to 3 barrels that we had held back for a reserve 2011 ended up being blended into the regular Cabernet 2011. When we tasted it, we could not believe the incredible quality of the 11. Granted, it didn't have the rich color, but it had the rich flavor. So the 2010 does have more intense color and definitely beautiful fruit. The 2011 is a little lighter, but every bit as delicious as we could have possibly hoped for that season.
It was probably one of the best, quote unquote, regular cabs ever, right?
Yeah.
So a couple quick questions. What year were you married?
1971.
Did y'all see that hesitation there? That was really funny. Good question, Jim and Jane Greenwood. And then Jane Hunt said, what did you do for income when starting up the vineyard?
Believe it or not, I was commuting back and forth to Washington, D.C. I worked for the Postal Service at their headquarters National Marketing Program. So it was a 60-mile one-way commute going from Amosville to Washington, D.C., leaving here normally at about 4:30 in the morning to make sure I got there in time, and then getting home. And then that's when, once I got home, that's when Cheryl and I would start kicking off some of the cleanup in the fields. So that was about 12 years that we were in the process of commuting. Now, before we're getting close to the end, I'm going to turn the program over to Amy to give a very special announcement that we're really excited about, and then we'll do our closing joke.
Oh, it's my turn. Sorry. Sorry. Hi, guys. So it's the marketing department. We have very, very, very big news this week. We have gotten our blessing and our shipping license from ABC for Virginia, and this is with UPS. We are very, very excited. Now, I want you all to listen very carefully to this. Okay, so we can ship in Virginia now. We used to not be able to. Every state is different. We're very excited. So what we're going to be doing is offering a flash sale. Listen carefully. And it is free shipping for 6 or 12 bottles. 6 or 12 bottles. Remember, at 12 bottles, you get a 10% case discount. And you can call in your order. You can email in your order. It might be a little bit easier to do email right away. We will only honor the free shipping for orders placed between when the show is over and midnight on Sunday. So if you email, you can, we will call you back. You know, we'll just call you and say, hey, we got your order, and we'll get your credit card information, all that good stuff. If for some reason you don't hear from us until Monday, don't worry, kids. We're all about getting your order. But if those of you who live a distance from us in Virginia are, oh, Stacy, thank you for the good intro. Appreciate that. So this is where you can call or wait, I gotta turn it around again. Hang on a second. There you go. So you can call or email. I'm gonna leave that up for a minute while I'm still talking. This is for free shipping on 6 or 12 bottles in Virginia, beginning tonight through tomorrow, Sunday the 19th at midnight, and only you people watching will know about this, okay? See, the email is up, and it is very important that you all know that operators are standing by. The operators are standing by. They're ready to take your orders. So we'll put that up there one more time. Oh my gosh, the phones are ringing already. The phones are ringing already. Too bad all the operators are upstairs. Okay, whichever. Yeah, leave a message and we'll call you back. And now, for our closing joke.
Once again, I cannot thank you all enough for being with us tonight. I hope you're all very safe. The joke tonight is actually one that I'd like to, as a memorial to Jim Talkington, who was the individual that was responsible for our first home in Dale City, and then his wife, Ann Talkington, who helped us buy this place. This was a joke that he actually gave to us. It was last year when there was a major competition, and it was the famous Poet Laureate. And every year, the Poet Laureate is honored in the U.S. at Carnegie Hall. So it was a sold-out attendance, and basically he was introduced. He was Lord Byron, and Lord Byron was brought onto the stage. And the announcer said, what we're going to do to honor the Poet Laureate is ask somebody if they would like to compete against him in creating a poem. And a young gentleman from the front row immediately raised his hand and said, I would like to. And he said, okay, please step forward. What's your name? And he says, my name is Charles Dombrowski, and I'd like to represent all the Polish people of the world. And he said, okay, Mr. Dombrowski, what I'm going to have you do is go into another room which is protected, and you cannot hear what the question's going to be. And when your turn is you'll be brought forward. So Mr. Dombrowski was taken off the stage. He then looked at the Poet Laureate, and said, okay, you're going to have 30 seconds to create a poem, and I'm going to give you a word, and the word has to be incorporated in the poem. The word is Timbuktu. The crowd gasped, thinking, how can anyone create a poem with that word in such a short period of time? The time ticked away, and when 30 seconds was over, the moderator said, are you ready? And he said, yes, I am. Across the blazing desert sands came the mighty caravans, camels marching 2 by 2 on their way to Timbuktu. There was a massive uproar and applause as the audience suddenly realized what had just been accomplished. Then Mr. Dombrowski was called out. Coming to the stage, the moderator said, okay, the word is going to be Timbuktu. You have 30 seconds to create a poem. Mr. Dombrowski thought a minute, and he said, I'm ready. Me and Tim, a campin' went, came across 3 whores in a tent. Them being 3 and us being 2, I bucked 1 and Tim bucked 2. Thank you all so much for joining us. May you all have a wonderful week, and looking forward to seeing you again same time next week.
And yes, for everybody who asked, we are still doing curbside pickup. We'd way rather see you than ship to you, but we are so delighted to ship it as well. And we'll put that up there one more time. All right. Thank you all for tuning in again. We love seeing you. Thank you.